The silence in the courtroom wasn't just an absence of sound. It was a weight, pressing down on me, threatening to shatter the last fragments of my composure. The judge, a man with tired eyes that had seen too many fractured families, looked directly at me. "Mrs. Hayes," he said, his voice echoing in the cavernous room. "We are prepared to make a ruling." My breath hitched. My stomach twisted into a knot of pure, cold dread. Me fingers, slick with sweat, gripped the polished wood of the defense table until my knuckles turned white. This was it. The moment my world would either hold together or fly apart. Then, a small shuffle from the gallery broke the spell. My 6-year-old son, Leo, stood up. He clutched a folded, slightly crumpled piece of notebook paper in his small hand, something he had tucked into his dinosaur-themed backpack that morning. He walked with a solemn purpose toward the center of the room, his small frame swallowed by the vastness of the court. His voice, though quiet, was unnervingly clear. "Your Honor," he said, looking up at the judge's bench. "I wrote something. Can I please read it?" Every head turned. The rustling of papers ceased. Even Eleanor, my mother-in-law, the architect of this entire nightmare, froze, her mask of composed concern faltering for a fraction of a second. Leo, my tiny boy in a worn navy sweater, stood before the law, holding his letter like a shield. My heart hammered against my ribs. A frantique, painful rhythm. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move. I could only watch the son I was about to lose, and pray. What he said next would change not just the ruling, but everything. "My name is Alara Hayes. I'm 34, a freelance editor, and the mother of the bravest boy in the world. Leo is 6. He loves astrophysics, strawberry jam on his toast, and the single nightlight we keep on in the hallway. He has my smile and his father's pensive gaze, the one that seemed to absorb the world before passing judgment, before our life became a legal battleground. It was quiet, not glamorous, but ours. We lived in a rented bungalow with a leaky faucet and a garden full of stubborn weeds I could never conquer. The backyard was just big enough for a small vegetable patch, and the treehouse David, my husband, had built for Leo the summer before he died. It was our sanctuary. David passed away 2 years ago. A sudden heart attack on a perfectly ordinary Thursday morning. I remember I was editing a manuscript on ancient civilizations when the call came. I never finished that project. For months, the world felt muted, colorless. David had been my anchor since we met in a dusty university library. He was the calm to my storm, the one person who made the future feel like a safe harbor. Losing him wasn't just losing a husband, it was losing the map to the rest of my life. But I had Leo, and his small, warm hand in mine was the only compass I needed. The days that followed were a blur of grief and logistics. I learned to function on autopilot. I packed his lunches, his favorite snacks arranged just so. I walked him to first grade, a bright, reassuring smile plastered on my face, only to come home and collapse onto the sofa. The silence of the house screaming at me. I never let him see me shatter. He needed a rock, so I carved myself into one. We grew impossibly close in that shared sorrow. He would crawl into my bed after a nightmare, not saying a word, just pressing his small back against mine until our breathing synced. "It's okay to be sad, Mommy," he'd whisper, his wisdom far beyond his years. Daddy would want us to be okay, sad. And then there was Eleanor, David's mother. From the moment David introduced us, she saw me as a temporary fixture, someone not quite up to the Hayes standard. Her family had old money, old connections, and an old way of looking at the world. I was, in her thinly veiled words, a sweet girl with artistic inclinations but no real foundation. David had always deflected her barbs with a laugh, promising she'd warm up to me. She never did. After his death, Her presence in our lives became a slow, creeping vine. At first, I mistook it for shared grief. I let her take Leo for weekends. I invited her to his school plays and birthday parties. I tried to build a bridge over the chasm of our loss. But the criticism was constant, delivered with a syrupy smile. "You look exhausted." "Dear, are you sure you're eating properly? That school is fine." "I suppose. But a boy with Leo's potential needs a more rigorous environment. All this emotional indulgence isn't healthy. He needs discipline, not just hugs." One afternoon, I came home to find her showing Leo a glossy brochure for a prestigious boarding school hundreds of miles away. "Eleanor, we can't possibly afford this. And he's only 6. I said, my voice tight. She barely glanced at me, her focus on my son. "Nonsense," she replied smoothly. "Quality is an investment. Some people just don't understand the importance of providing the very best." The implication hung in the air, thick and suffocating. That was when I started drawing lines, limiting her visits, politely declining her gifts that always came with strings attached. Her demeanor shifted from condescendingly sweet to glacially cold. Then, Leo came home from a weekend with her and asked, his eyes wide with confusion, "Mom, Grandma says you're too sad to take care of me, right? Is that true?" It was a knife to the heart. This wasn't about helping. It was a takeover. 2 weeks later, the thick, cream-colored envelope arrived by courier. Inside, the stark, black and white legal jargon screamed at me, petition for full custody. She was taking my son. The heavy paper felt like ice in my hands. The words, a venom seeping into my skin. Emotionally unstable. Financially insecure. Incapable of providing a stable environment. Each phrase was a carefully crafted dagger. She painted me as a fragile, weeping widow who couldn't even manage to match her son's socks, let alone guide him through life. The most insidious part was the kernel of truth she had twisted into a weapon. Was I grieving? Yes. Profoundly. Were there days I forgot to run the dishwasher, or cried in the car after dropping Leo at school? Of course. But I showed up. Every single day. I showed up for him. I read the bedtime stories, kissed his scraped knees, celebrated his crayon masterpieces as if they were museum-worthy. I was his constant, his safe place. And now, she was trying to convince the world that my love, stained with grief, wasn't enough. I called my sister. Clara. My voice, a strangled whisper. She was there in under an hour. Her car screeching to a halt in my driveway. She read the petition twice, her expression hardening from disbelief to pure fury. "She's not just playing dirty." "Elara," Clara said, her hand covering mine. "This is scorched earth. We have to fight back." I found a legal aid lawyer. A kind but visibly exhausted man named Mr. N.T. Davies. His office was cluttered with files, each one representing a family in crisis. His advice was practical, but not particularly reassuring. Document everything. Keep a calm demeanor. The court favors stability. He didn't seem to grasp the sheer force of nature he was up against. Meanwhile, Eleanor had retained the city's top family law firm, a shark in a bespoke suit who specialized in dismantling reputations with a polite smile. My nights became a frantic ritual of evidence gathering. I sat on the living room floor, surrounded by a sea of paper, Leo's report cards filled with glowing remarks, notes from his pediatrician confirming he was thriving, photos of us laughing on the swings. The house was quiet, except for the low hum of the refrigerator and the frantic thumping of my own heart. One night, while sorting through a stack of documents, panic seized me. I couldn't find Leo's most recent teacher conference summary, the one that praised his emotional intelligence. I tore through folders, my breath coming in ragged gasps. It wasn't there. Defeated, I slumped against a bookshelf, and my hand brushed against a small wooden box. Inside was a letter David had written me for our last anniversary. His familiar, looping script filled the page. You are the strongest person I know. Elara, you are the heart of this family. Tears streamed down my face as I clutched the letter. It wasn't evidence for a judge, but it was proof for me. It was a reminder of who I was before Eleanor tried to erase me. Her attacks grew more subtle, more vicious. She called one evening, her voice dripping with false concern. Darling, I know things must be tight. I took the liberty of paying Leo's dental bill. Don't worry about it. I felt a flash of shame and gratitude, and I accepted. A week later, a copy of that paid bill was submitted to the court as evidence of my financial dependency. Then came the anonymous tip to Child Protective Services. A caseworker, a woman with a weary but professional air, appeared at my door unannounced. Leo was at the kitchen table, meticulously building a spaceship out of magnetic tiles. Still in his dinosaur pajamas, I answered every question, my hands trembling slightly as I offered her a tour of our small, slightly cluttered, but clean and loving home. She was polite, her expression unreadable, but her visit left a stain of fear on everything. That night, Leo found me crying silently while folding laundry. He wrapped his small arms around my waist. Is it because of Grandma? He asked. His voice small. I just hugged him, unable to speak. The scent of his shampoo, a comfort and a terror. He was my reason for fighting. But he was also the prize she was trying to steal. I knew then that my son, in his quiet, watchful way, saw everything. The night before the final hearing was a long, sleepless vigil. I sat at our small kitchen table, the cold ceramic of my mug, a stark contrast to the frantic heat of my anxiety. Papers were fanned out before me, a flimsy fortress of proof against Eleanor's claims. Report cards, pediatrician records, a flyer from the library's reading hour. We attended every Wednesday. I needed the judge to see that Leo wasn't just surviving with me. He was loved. He was happy. He was thriving. But a cold whisper of doubt coiled in my stomach. What if the judge saw what Eleanor saw? A woman unmoored by grief. Too soft. Too emotional to be a proper parent. What if my love, which felt as vast and powerful as the ocean, looked like weakness under the harsh lights of the courtroom? Clara came over with a container of soup I couldn't eat, and a quiet, steady presence that I desperately needed. She didn't offer false reassurances. She just sat with me, sorting my papers into a neat, professional-looking binder. You have everything you need right here, she said, tapping a photo of Leo and me covered in flour from a baking mishap. You just have to let them see you. Not the widow. Not the grieving daughter-in-law. Just Leo's mom. Later that evening, long after Clara had gone, I found Leo on the floor of his room, a look of intense concentration on his face. He was carefully writing on a piece of lined paper with a crayon. What's that? My love, I asked, sinking to the floor beside him. He looked up, his expression serious. It's a letter, he said simply. For the judge. A lump formed in my throat. Oh, honey, you don't have to. He shook his head. A gesture, so much like his father's, it ached. It's okay. I just want him to know. In case he doesn't. He carefully folded the paper and slipped it into a side pocket of his backpack. Beside it, I saw the smooth, gray worry stone David had given him. I'm bringing my stone, too, he said, catching my gaze. Grandma said it was a silly rock. But you said it's okay to have things that make you feel brave. I pulled him into a hug, burying my face in his hair. He wasn't just my son. He was my partner in this. My small, courageous anchor. The next morning, the world was a palette of gray. Leo wore his favorite sweater, the one with a small patch on the elbow I'd sewn on myself. In the car, he was quiet, his small hand gripping mine. We arrived at the courthouse and took our seats in the back. Eleanor made her entrance a few minutes later, dressed in a sharp, tailored suit, her lawyer gliding beside her with a leather briefcase. She was the picture of wealth and power. I felt small, disheveled, my carefully chosen but simple dress suddenly feeling inadequate. I focused on the rhythmic pattern of Leo's breathing beside me. When our case was called, I walked forward on legs that felt like they might buckle. Eleanor's attorney went first. He was smooth, his voice a low, convincing purr as he painted a picture of my life as one of chaos and instability. He spoke of financial security, of private tutors and extracurriculars that Eleanor could provide. He presented the paid dental bill as proof of my inability to manage my own finances. He implied that my grief was a chronic condition that rendered me unfit. We believe Miss Hayes, while well-intentioned, is simply not equipped to provide Theodore with the structure and advantages he deserves, he concluded, looking at me with a pity that was more insulting than any accusation. I kept my face a mask of neutrality, Clara's words echoing in my head. Let them see you. When it was my turn, I spoke from the heart. I didn't argue or accuse. I simply told the truth. I told the judge about our pancake Sundays, about the stories we made up about the stars, about how Leo was learning to read. I provided the binder of records, showing his excellent health, his perfect attendance, and his happy friendships. I didn't cry. I just told our story. Then, just as the judge leaned into his microphone, a silence falling over the room as he prepared to speak, Leo let go of my hand. He stood up, stepped away from the bench, and walked toward the center of the courtroom. Your Honor, he said, his small voice cutting through the tension. Can I read something I wrote it myself? The judge blinked, taken aback. He glanced at my lawyer, then at Eleanor's, a flicker of uncertainty on his face. You wrote something, son? He asked, his tone softening. Leo nodded, his chin set with determination. Yes. Sire. It's about my mom. The room held its breath. Even Eleanor's lawyer seemed momentarily speechless. The judge leaned forward, a long, contemplative look on his face. All right, he said, his voice quiet but firm. Proceed. Leo carefully unfolded the paper, smoothing it out on the railing in front of him. He cleared his throat. A small, serious sound in the profound silence. My name is Leo Hayes, he began, his voice steady. I am 6 years old. I like building starships and strawberry jam. I want to live with my mom. The judge didn't move, his eyes fixed on my son. Leo continued, reading from his paper. My mom gives the best hugs, especially when I have a bad dream. She makes pancakes on Sundays and lets me draw the faces on them with blueberries, even if they look wobbly. A tear escaped and traced a hot path down my cheek. I didn't dare wipe it away. Sometimes we miss my dad a lot, and we cry. But then she tells me a story about him, and we look at his picture, and she says it's okay to be sad and happy at the same time. He paused and looked up from the paper, his gaze finding the judge's. I know Grandma loves me, but she says my mom is too soft. She doesn't like my worry stone. He held up the small gray stone from his pocket. My dad gave it to me. Grandma says it's just a silly rock, but my mom says it's okay to have things that help you be brave. I think soft is good. Soft is warm. I want to live with my mom. He folded the letter with meticulous care. That's all. Thank you. Then he turned, walked back to me, and slipped his hand into mine. The worry stone still clutched in his palm. I couldn't speak. I could only squeeze his hand. My heart, a painful, glorious ache in my chest. The judge sat back in his chair, his gaze distant. He looked from Leo to me, and then to a pale, rigid Eleanor. The silence stretched for what felt like an eternity before he finally spoke. This court acknowledges the statement provided by the minor Theodore Hayes. His voice was measured, deliberate. While it is highly unconventional, it is clear his words were his own, born from a place of profound emotional honesty. I find them compelling. My breath caught. The judge turned his gaze to Eleanor's attorney. I have reviewed all submitted materials. There is no evidence of neglect, no documented abuse, and no professional testimony to suggest Mrs. Lee, please. Hayes is an unfit mother. This court does not believe that financial disparity or a parent's natural grieving process constitutes grounds to remove a child from a loving and stable home. He looked at Eleanor, especially not when that child's emotional well-being is so clearly and articulately tied to his mother. He raised a hand, silencing the objection that was forming on her lawyer's lips. Furthermore, the judge continued, his eyes now on me. The child has expressed a clear, sincere, and compelling desire to remain in his mother's care. In a case like this, that carries immense weight, he gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. Mrs. Hayes, this court finds that you are a fit and loving parent. Full legal and physical custody of your son shall remain with you. Petition denied. For a moment, the world went blurry. The weight that had been crushing my chest for months simply evaporated. I pulled Leo into my arms, burying my face in his hair, and finally let the sobs come not of sorrow, but of pure, overwhelming relief. He held on tight, his small arms a lifeline around my neck. As we walked out, we passed Eleanor. She sat ramrod straight, her face a mask of stone, her white-knuckled hands clutching her expensive purse. I didn't feel triumph, only a deep, weary sadness for the connection she had chosen to break. I just held my son's hand and kept walking. Outside, the gray morning had given way to a weak but persistent sunlight. Leo squinted up at me, a smile finally breaking across his face. Did I do okay? Mom, I knelt down on the hard courthouse steps, ignoring the people passing by, and kissed his forehead. You did more than okay, I whispered. You saved us. The house felt different in the days that followed. Lighter. I found his letter, still folded, on his nightstand. I taped it to the center of the refrigerator, right next to a drawing of a lopsided rocket. It was a declaration, a constitution for our little family of two. I finally understood that what Eleanor saw as weakness was my greatest strength. My softness was not a flaw. It was the safe ground where my son could be a child. It was the space where he could be sad, and brave, and everything in between. He taught me that being a mother isn't about being perfect or unbreakable. It's about being present, about showing up with an open heart, even when it's aching. If you're a parent, or if you've ever had to fight to protect someone you love, then you know the fire that forges you in these moments. You know the terror of almost losing everything, and the profound strength you find when you refuse to let go. Your love, even when it feels quiet or imperfect, is a powerful force. It matters more than you know. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you of your own strength or the love you have for your family, please take a moment to like this video and share it with someone who might need to hear this message today. And I'd love to read your story in the comments below. Have you ever had a moment where you had to find a strength you didn't know you had? How did you rise? For more stories about the power of love and the resilience of the human spirit, please subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. Thank you for being here and for listening. From my heart to yours,